Star Wars The Heart of the Jedi by Kenneth C. Flint. Chapter 21. As Gek's attention shifted toward Luke and away from Thatch, the Ewok acted. With a lithe quickness that belied his apparent pain, the little creature grabbed the prod, wrenched it from the officer's hand. What? Gek began in surprise as his head whipped back around towards Thatch. He never finished. The word turned into a rising scream of agony as the Ewok reversed the rod and drove its glowing tip ruthlessly, powerfully, and with a growl of satisfaction right up into the man's groin. Blue light crackled outward from the power tip. It ran up in a ragged, spreading web across the officer's stomach, and down in twining vines along the columns of his legs. He shuddered violently, body drawn up tautly, as his scream went on. The startled crewmen looked around toward him, their gun muzzles swinging away from Luke. Luke used the opening to act himself. He jerked the man holding his left arm hard around. The sudden move caught the man off guard, and he slammed into the man on the right. They staggered away, both releasing Luke. The other four guards caught the movement and began to swing back. Luke's hand shot out towards one of the staggered men, his outspread fingers straining beckoningly. The man's blaster flew from its holster to Luke, the butt slapped into his palm. 3 quick shots from him and 3 of the armed crewmen were knocked backward to fall with smoking, lethal wounds. The 4th returned fire, but the agile young Jedi ducked away, rolling into the shelter of the captain's chair. The still-armed one who had held him yanked out his blaster, and the 2 crewmen opened fire, their shots ricocheting from the chair in a spray of sparks. Luke's return bolts were more accurate, felling both. Across the deck, Thatch now finally pulled the rod away from Gek. The network of power playing across the officer died. He sagged to the metal floor, like something boneless. The final, disarmed crewman looked about at his fallen comrades in shock, then turned to run. Shoot him! Thatch yelled to Yuke. The young man hesitated. The Ewok did not. As the Imperial reached the bridge hatchway, Thatch hurled the rod. Like a dagger, it flew, end over end, flashing to its mark. The glowing tip jabbed deep into the man's back, just behind the heart. There was a single, sharp flash from the rod. The crewman gasped. His neck snapped back. He toppled, crashed down. You should have fired, Thatch said to Luke, waddling to the downed man. I couldn't shoot him in the back, said Luke. You would have warned them, Ewok practically pointed out. Had to be done. He drew the rod out of the fatal wound. It was crackled and dark now, the power expended in the last burst. Well, that's done for, he said and tossed it away. What about their ship? Asked Luke. Aye, that's next, the captain said, moving to his console. Got to act quick, too. They'll be wondering what happened to this lot real soon. He climbed into the command chair, still smoking in spots from blaster hits, and started working controls. What can we do? Asked Luke, watching curiously. We've no speed to outrun them, Thatch explained, but we've surely enough power for something else. Tractor beams! He punched a final button. An electrical whining sound rose all about them, growing swiftly in intensity. The Imperial patrol cruiser drifting close beside them was yanked abruptly sideways. Within it, the entire crew was staggered, many falling down. In seconds, the ship was drawn across the gap to slam against the salvage scow's flat, metal wall of hull. The square ship's thick armor plates smashed full onto the outthrust muzzles of the turbolaser batteries. Some guns were crushed, others driven from their mounts. A few exploded. Gun crews bolted in panic. Got him, Thatch said with satisfaction. Those beams have pulled the hulks of full-size destroyers out of high-gravity fields. This one wouldn't be going anywhere, but you can't fire at us now. But we can't go anywhere either, Luke pointed out. Well, we don't want to. Not yet. Ewok pushed another series of buttons and pulled a large lever. Now, a grumbling, grinding sound joined the whine of tractor beam power. Huge panels at the bow, stern, and waist of the Entrepreneur slid open. From within the ship, 3 long points some 30 yards in circumference emerged, sliding outwards on the expanding sections of thick, telescoping rods. Their tips flared with a brilliant blue-white incandescence. They touched the side of the Imperial craft at forward, midship, and aft points, melting their way in through thick metal as if it was a soft cheese touched by 3 hot knives. Within, the Imperial crew was just recovering from the first jarring, frantically trying to it says access, frantically trying to access what had happened, but that's supposed to be assess what had happened to them when the tips broke through. A new confusion ensued. As the hull's integrity was breached, the inner atmosphere burst outward. Men scrambled to escape from the compartments as their air was voided and the freezing vacuum of space poured in. But the penetrating points on their extending rods were relentless. They shoved on ahead through the inner compartments, melting in through the width of the ship, thrusting wide, ragged channels into her vitals. "What are those things?" asked Luke, watching the spectacle on the view screen with mixed fascination and horror. "Dismantling torches," Thatch tersely explained. "I use them for cutting apart salvage too big to bring inside. Though it's usually at a safer distance than this. They can dismember a full-size battleship in 10 minutes. And it was clear their work on this much smaller Imperial ship would go a great deal more quickly. Within the captive and stricken vessel, it was all chaos now. A very few men stuck to the bridge controls, vainly trying to break free of the scow's death grip. The rest ran helter-skelter through the ship as the tips rammed on in, burning through bulkheads, equipment, and machines, causing explosions and structural collapse. Many of the surprised crew were trapped before they could escape. The rest managed to reach the craft's escape pods, and a dozen or so of the small round vehicles blasted safely away from their dying mothership. Very soon it was over. Tips of the torches melted through to the other side and popped from the opposite hull. The Imperial, like a speared fish, hung helplessly impaled on the 3 points, while the last of her oxygen bled away and the last of her power died. "I drilled her pretty well," Thatch proclaimed in an approving way. He pushed buttons and pulled levers again. The 3 torches withdrew on their retractable rods. The sound of the tractor beams died. Released, the Imperial ship drifted away slowly. The sparkling electrical light of severed power cables flared in her gaping holes. No signs of life showed. Luke stared at the wreckage with dismay. "You've just killed several hundred men," he said. That shrugged. "Didn't leave us very much choice now, did they, mate?" Luke shook his head. "I suppose not," he said regretfully. "I just hoped that the killing was finally over." "You're a soldier, mate," Thatch said. "So long as you stay one, there'll be battles to fight. You can mark me on that." "Maybe you're right," he said thoughtfully, looking at the dead ship. "Maybe you're right." The Millennium Falcon flew out over the sands of Tatooine. She sailed slowly and glided close above the ground while Han, Leia, and Chewie looked out searchingly from her cockpit at the monotonous landscape spreading far about them. I know old Ben didn't live real far from town," Han said as he piloted the ship. "Seems like the most likely spot for Luke to have come from if he did walk in." How would Han know that? That is some real out-of-character knowledge. "And one of the most likely spots for him to visit here," added Leia. "What better reason would he have had to return to Tatooine again? He told me he'd had a strong urge to come back and see the old places again." "And he told me he was trying to find something he'd lost here," added Han. "Something to do with the Force. Well, Ben's sure the one that all started with." He peered ahead of them with a worried frown. "I just hope this is the right direction." Leia too gazed at the still empty vista. "It does seem like we've been searching this way for a long time." "Did I try another sweep?" he asked. "Wait," she said, her gaze fixing on something off to their left. "I saw a glint," she pointed. "Go over that way." Han brought the Falcon around in a slow, banking turn. Soon a ridge appeared ahead. Then a small building nestled against its base became visible. Finally, they could see that the glint was caused by sunlight reflecting from a flat glass surface. It was the front canopy window of an X-Wing fighter. Han slowed further and circled over the area while they scrutinized it carefully. "That's gotta be it," he declared. "What's that?" said Leia, pointing again. "On the ridge." He looked. In a sheltered spot atop the line of rocks sat another X-Wing. I don't know what that's about, he said. We've got to check this out. Chewie, let's put her down by the house. Falcon slid in and settled to the desert in a brief flurry of blown sand. In moments, her ramp dropped down. Chewie, Han, and Leia emerged, all armed with blasters, and walked cautiously to the ground. They paused there to look warily around. The area seemed deserted. They approached the fighter. This one's Luke's, all right, Han said as they reached its side. I know the markings. Chewie, go on up and check the other one on the ridge. Oh, and be careful about it, huh? The Wookiee barked in acknowledgement and went off. Han went to the equipment bay in the ship's side. I'll search in here, he told Leia. You want to check the cockpit? For anything special? She asked. He shrugged. Who knows? We're faking this, remember? When he opened the bay and began to poke through the stored equipment, Leia climbed up the ship and into the cockpit. As the two searched, Valadian and then Goen ventured out of the Falcon. They gazed around, Valadian curiously, Goen with great distaste, then walked to the fighter. I've finished deciphering the reply to our coded transmission to Mon Mothma, the senator told them. She is relieved we have survived, but is naturally most distressed by what has happened. What about the ceasefire? Leia asked from the cockpit. They will continue to hold it for now, he replied, unless further provoked. She agrees that it is a most crucial priority at present to see that young Skywalker is found and protected if need be. You have her permission to proceed. Look here, is all this going to take long? Goen peevishly asked. It's very hot here. I'm actually perspiring. Gee, hope you don't spoil your clothes, said Han. He slammed the bay closed in frustration. Nothing here at all that can help us. Leia gave up on her own search, climbing out on the wing of the fighter. I don't find anything here either. He didn't leave any information on the shipboard computer. There's no messages. Nothing. Would the young man have left such a thing here? Valadian reasoned. It would seem he meant to conceal his ship by leaving it in this place. Should anyone hostile to him come upon it, any information left inside would be easily found. The senator's got a point, said Han. Let's try the house. He and Leia crossed to the abandoned structure and carefully moved inside. The other two followed them, Goen reluctantly. This place has really been trashed, Han unnecessarily remarked as he moved into the center of the house's single room. How squalid, said Goen. Some friend of yours actually lived here? Han and Leia both ignored him as they began to poke around. Han picked through litter on the floor, peered in any likely-looking hidey hole. Leia moved around the room, searching with her eyes. Finally, she was drawn to a studded chest in one corner. She opened it to find it empty. There doesn't seem to be anything here either, she said in disappointed tones, dropping the lid closed. Not that I can see, Han looked at her. But what about feelings, Leia? Do you get any sense of Luke here? She concentrated on the room for a moment. I don't know, she said at last. I do get something, an impression of some energy. But I'm not sure it's from him, and I think it's coming from outside. Let's try to pin it down, he said. They all went out. She paused, considered, then began to move slowly, step by step, like a dowser following the forked stick's vibrations to a well. She paced away from the house and around one side, making her way towards the base of the ridge behind. She stopped there, head cocked, face frowning as if listening to some distant sound. Then she nodded and pointed to the ground. Something's here, buried. If you say so, said Han. He gestured to Goen. Come on, pal, let's dig. Me? Said the astonished prince. Hey, you've got the longest fingernails. Get to work. With a glower at Han, the young man squatted by him, and they both began to scoop away sand. As they worked, Han said with trepidation, I sure hope we're not going to find... He stopped abruptly as he realized the horror of what he would say. He looked up to Leia. Find Luke? She finished for him. No, she assured him. I know it's not him. I'd know if he had died. He had scraped away a foot thick layer of sand when they struck something. A square of heavy cloth had been stretched out and anchored at the corners by rocks. Han rolled it back, revealing a hole. Something in the hole gleamed from the light above. He reached down and lifted it out. A smooth, milk-white bowl of crystal came into view. He held it up. It shone iridescently into the sunlight. Han handed it to Leia. Luke had this, she said with definitiveness, feeling the object over. He hid it here. She looked down into it. There's something inside. She reached in and pulled out a small, flat circle of metal. Transmission disc, said Han elatedly. Come on, let's play it. Han slipped the disc into a slot on a wall console at the workstation in the Falcon's lounge. From a lens above it, a beam was projected onto the deck below. Within the beam floated the 3D image of Luke Skywalker's head. If someone's seeing this, I hope it's you, Leia, the image said. I figured that only you would have followed me here, and that only you could have found this message in the bowl. If this is you, it probably means something's happened to me. I knew if it did, you'd come back and track me down. I'm going to the unknown regions. There's a chance I won't get back. If I don't, I want this bowl to be in your hands. It holds a secret of the Jedi, Leia. That should be passed to you. Maybe you don't have the skills and the Force to learn it now, but someday you will. Keep it safe. Don't try to follow or find me, Leia, he went on. This is something I've got to do alone. I hope you'll understand. Say goodbye to Han and Chewie and the rest for me, and may the Force be with you all. The image flickered and vanished. Transmitting light and beam went out. Leia looked from the spot where Luke's face had been up to the bowl on a nearby table. Secret of the Jedi? She said. Maybe you can tell us where he went, suggested Han. How? She asked, moving to it. What does it do? I bet there's some kind of Jedi trick to it, said Han. Why don't you try some of that Force stuff on it, Leia? Try to concentrate. She picked it up and held it out before her in both hands. She bowed her head over it, closed her eyes, and went tense. Her face drew into a hard frown as she bent her whole will to the task. Look, an awed Senator Valadian breathed, pointing at the bowl. The milk-white crystal was beginning to glow. It grew brighter, held steady a moment, wavered, then fluttered out like a brown flame. Leia relaxed and took in a deep breath. Sorry, he said. Luke was right. I don't have the Jedi skills to make this work yet. Did you get anything at all? Asked Han. Some vague sense of a place. A planet, I think. Very strong in the Force, but that's all. No idea where it is. She was setting the bowl gently down on the table when Chewbacca entered the cabin. Chewie! Greeted Han. What'd you find? The Wookiee growled and grunted out a rather long speech to him. The other ship's empty, Han translated for the rest. No sign of who flew it either, except this. Chewie held up a blue fighter pilot's helmet. They all examined it closely. Helmet from Blue Flight Squadron, Leia identified. Why would he have come here? Luke left the base alone. Blue Squadron, said musingly. Wedge. What do you mean? Asked Leia. Wedge told me right before we left that they found a guy dead. A Blue Squadron pilot. His ship turned up missing. It's not missing anymore, Leia said grimly. Han, somebody's after Luke. They're following him. Wherever it is he's going, I'm sure of it. It could very well be some agent of High Admiral... It could well be some agent of High Admiral Tharkus, put in Valadian. If he really does mean to destroy the threat of any Force wielders, this follower of our young Jedi might be an assassin. We've got to go after him, Han, Leia said anxiously. We have to warn him, give him help. Luke told us he had to do this thing alone. pointed out. Can't know that he's in this kind of danger, she argued back. He doesn't know what's at stake, including the New Republic. Right there, he agreed. We don't have much choice, but how will we find him? He's got a long start, and we don't know where he's going. We know he's headed for the unknown regions. Oh, yeah, he said dryly. Some help. Do you know how big that section of the galaxy is? You want to find one planet there? It'd be easier to find one Santa grain in this desert. 1,000,000,000 to 1. I thought you said never tell me the odds, she retorted. We've got to do it, no matter what, she added stubbornly, striking a hands on hips pose. We have to try. We'll worry about the rest when we get there. Han looked at her and grinned. No? You're starting to sound like me. He looked around to the Wookiee. Okay then, Chewie, you heard the lady. Get the Falcon fired up, we've got a long way to go. He turned away from them to mutter under his breath. I hope to hell we come back.